If you clicked on this video, you want to get better at League of Legends, and you are at the right place. Because today we're going to be talking about how to actually improve in League of Legends and how to unstuck yourself if you feel like you are hard stuck. And we're going to be doing that through a list of different topics. So first of all, we're going to be covering what it means to be hard stuck and when are you actually hard stuck. Because a lot of people think that they're hard stuck, but they're actually not hard stuck. So how do we actually improve in League of Legends? And we're going to be doing that through habit creation, the learning objective, reviewing, and I'm also going to give you guys a tip on how to review. We're also going to be looking at how to measure and see your own improvement. I'm going to be talking about how do I improve and what works for me. And then also about one of my clients, how did they improve and how did they recognize that they were actually getting better. So if you guys want coaching, there's going to be a link in the description. I'm really happy to go on this journey together with you guys and help you guys improve and get better at the game. Let's start with the first segment. So what does being stuck actually mean? A lot of people may think, oh, you're in Diamond 2 for a couple of months, which means that you're a hard stuck Diamond 2 player right now. And most of the times, this is actually not true. I want to make the shift away from rank and I want to make the shift towards actual gameplay related stuff. Rank is a telling factor if you look at it, of course, over the very long period of time. But in the short term, give or take 2, 3 months, 4 months, I think anything below 6 months, rank isn't really a telling factor of if you're actually hard stuck or not. So, as I said, I want to make it towards more gameplay-oriented topics. We're going to cut the rank from this point, and we're going to only look at what's actually happening in-game, in our micro-execution, but also in our decisions, depending on what we make in the game. So, when you're actually hard stuck is if you are unable to change your behavior in-game for a long period of time. And this is where we're going to be making the link towards improvement. Improvement is actually getting better at in-game related stuff in League. So how do we actually improve in League of Legends? Well, there's a few things that we have to keep in mind when it comes to improving in League. First of all, how does improving work in League of Legends? And there's a few tools that we're going to be using to actually measure this and break this down. So we're going to be starting off with the average League player. The average League player has a skill set. And a skill set that's ranging from all different types of things that you can do in game. Like you have your laning phase, you have wave management, resets, fundamentals, warding and leaning, jungle tracking, threat assessment. You got mid game, you got lull states, everything like that happens in the game. A player has a different skill set depending on the topic that we're talking about in game. So maybe if we're looking at Johnny, this is Johnny. Johnny is an Emerald 3 mid laner. If Johnny is an Emerald 3 mid laner, what's going to happen is that this is going to be his average rank, right? And this is E3. And if we have E3 right here, there's a lot of different variables in Johnny's gameplay where in some of his fundamentals are better than some of his others. So if we take Johnny, for example, right, that's in Emerald 3 right now, maybe his laning is actually at Emerald 1 level. So we're going to be putting a little bit of a dot there. His laning might be at Emerald 1 level, but maybe his wave management is at Emerald 2 level. But maybe his jungle threat assessment is maybe at Platinum 2 level, so it's all the way down here. And then his mid game is a horror. It's disgusting. He's making all of these mid game mistakes. Maybe that one is actually at Platinum 4 level, and maybe he's really creative. So he sees angles, and his team fighting is actually incredible. So maybe that's at Emerald 1 level, right? Johnny seems to be a little bit of the intuitive, a little bit of the mechanical player, and this for an average then makes your rank Emerald 3. This makes you an Emerald 3 average player, even though some parts of the gameplay are better than Emerald 3, while other parts of the gameplay are worse than Emerald 3. So how do we actually improve at League of Legends is by taking up these weaker points and making them better, so the overall baseline level of your gameplay actually becomes a little bit higher. Maybe if we improve at this terrible mid game of us, and we actually make this mid game, instead of it being around platinum level, we actually make it an emerald 3 level mid game. I unfortunately used the wrong marker. Maybe we can make this an emerald 3 level mid game. What's going to happen is then our gameplay is going to be leveling up, and we're going to be coming on average an emerald 2.5 level player. So that is how you actually get better at League of Legends. So the way that we do that is through habit creation. League is a game in which that you have, like, you're constantly just executing. You're executing, stuff's happening, you're gathering information, you're processing the information, and you're executing based upon the information and upon the system that you've built in your own brain to actually process that information and utilize that and execute upon that in game. So how do we change our system so that we actually improve and get better at the game? Well, this is called habit creation. And habit creation means that you change the way that you react or change something that you do towards certain inputs that you get. So how does it actually look in League? How can we translate this towards League? A very good example that I use in my own coaching practices with a lot of my clients is, for example, in the mid game. In the mid game, there is a lot of information going on in the mid game. It's a lot of decision making that actually happens in the mid game. And for you to make the right decisions in the mid game, you have to gather a lot of information. A lot of players struggle with gathering information. And the main reason why they struggle with gathering information is because they don't know which questions they have to ask themselves. So if I would be coaching a player and I see that they struggle with gathering information and struggle with asking themselves the right quality questions, or they just don't ask themselves a single question at all, maybe they're like an intuitive player and just autopiloting all the time, what I actually recommend to them is, I actually recommend to them as a learning objective, hey, we need to stop autopiloting and we need to start asking ourselves questions. This is where we're going to be starting to form a habit. This is where we're starting to create a habit right here. So how do we actually do that? Well, the way that we do that is by, hey, I recommend, since you never ask yourself any question before in the game in your life, what we can do is we can give you a cue. We can give you a cue of you starting to ask yourself the question. So a very good example of a question that I would I recommend them to ask themselves is the question, what's next? It's a very general question. It's a very vague question, but it starts making the brain gears work. So what I recommend to them, right, is, hey, I want you to take a sticky note, right, and write on that sticky note what's next, and I want you to paste that sticky note on your monitor beneath the minimap. So every time you look at the minimap, you will see that sticky note with that question, what's next? And then what's going to happen is that you're going to be doing that. You're going to be like, next time you queue up, you're going to be in the game. You look at your minimap at like minute 14 when you're like dead or you're like walking from base and you see that sticky note. You're like, hey, what's next? And this is going to make your brain gears turn right here. You're going to press the tab button and you're going to actually see what's happening in the game. You're going to be asking yourself, oh, a dragon's going to come up in a minute. Maybe I need to play for that with my team. Pinging the dragon. And then suddenly your team knows how to play for the dragon as well. That's how it all starts. And then by doing that consistently, right, for a period of time, what's going to happen is that you're going to start building a routine. You're going to start doing this behavior even without this particular post-it note on your monitor screen. And to make this even better, we're also going to be talking about the review process and how we can even how we can speed this up even more in the next slide. And then, of course, there's also a reward section. Like, you can reward yourself outside of game. You can reward yourself inside of game. Personally, I like to reward myself when I'm looking at the review and I see that I did something really well. And it's maybe not something I would have done before, then I get a really happy feeling, and that's my reward. But some people like to do it with food. So people like to get themselves a sandwich or a pizza. Anything works. Definitely understand that a reward system is good to have. So, we're gonna continue right here. Got a lot of stuff in here, but it's so amazing, right? How long does it actually take to form a new habit, and what does the process of forming a new habit actually look like? Because a lot of people may wonder, hey, if I focus on this one specific thing, right? If I focus on this, for example, only on my my wave management in lane, what I recognize is that my mental stack gets overloaded. And I start inting my jungle trade assessment. I start inting my trades because I'm so focused on the wave. And the reality is, it's true. It's exactly what happens. So if we're going to be drawing this line again, right here that we got this nice little emerald tree line from Johnny, right? And we had his laning and his wave management was already pretty decent. And his mid game was a horror. And his jungle trade assessment was also pretty whack, right? So what we'll then recognize, okay, in this case, we're actually I give Johnny a learning objective based upon the jungle trade assessment, because I looked at it and I said and I thought like, hey, this is a no-go. We need to fix this up right now. What I'm gonna recommend to Johnny then is, right, hey Johnny, this jungle trade assessment is whack. It's something that we need to focus on. We need to work on to get better as a player. So I want you to bring this one up towards at least an Emerald 3, potentially even an Emerald 2 level of jungle threat assessment. So I want you to fully focus on your threat assessment, and everything else, be okay with dropping that. Be okay with like letting that go, because we're gonna try to form a habit and make this one better as a fundamental. So what's gonna happen, right? If you do this, if you fully focus on trying to get your jungle threat assessment to a higher level, the reality of the situation is your mental energy is going to be less. You have less mental energy for the rest of the fundamentals that you were potentially also really good at. So maybe your wave management actually drops down to about an Emerald 2 level instead of it being Emerald 1. Maybe your laning actually becomes an Emerald 4 level. Maybe your mid game, which was already like pretty dog shit, becomes like even worse, right? But this is only temporary because you've already built in habits of these particular stages of the game. So what's going to happen is that the less mental energy you're going to need to spend on improving your jungle threat assessment, which is going to get better every week that you're going to work on it, means that slowly this will eventually get back to its original form while this is improving. And then 3 weeks later, when you do not really need to spend too much mental energy towards this jungle threat assessment, you can also focus on the other parts of the gameplay again. And then you recognize that you are suddenly, you're freed up in your mental stack. You can do everything like you've done it before, but now your jungle threat assessment is actually much better than it used to be. So you've improved. And that's going to be the goal, because League is all about improving, and eventually improving is going to change your rank as well. So how does this actually look like? Well, you can see right here how long it actually takes to form a new habit. Well, you got this you got this picture right here, right? And it says that 3 weeks minimum and 8 months maximum, and average on 2 months. Like, that's a long ass time. That's actually really long. So what I actually recommend is, I actually recommend 3 weeks. It's also with the coaching that we recommend. We usually give a learning objective for 2 to 3 weeks to work on, for 2 to 3 weeks to review, and then whenever you've been able to actually form the habit and gotten better at that particular part of the game, that's when it's time for a new review, and we can focus on the next particular fundamental that we need to improve and get better at. So it takes some time, guys. Expect it to take at least 3 weeks, but even up to 2 months sometimes. Like, I've had some situations myself where it only took me 2 months before it started to click something in game. But when it eventually clicked, I was really happy. So I want to also talk about reviewing in League, right? Because that's not a subject that we haven't really covered too much. we've now talked about the learning objective and the one specific fundamental to focus on. So if I'm going to be giving an example from one of my coaching sessions, what I would do if someone would come at me and they're playing Syndra. And I look at their lane, and what I see is that they're never, ever timing their abilities with the enemy last hits, and therefore they're missing all of their abilities. What I'm going to recommend is like, how does it actually look like to improve at that specific part, and how do I give them tips when it comes to being a coach? So I see that their Q usage is a disaster, the ability usage is a disaster. So at the end of the session, I'm going to say, hey, listen, this is what I recognized. I want you to improve your ability usage in the lane, because I think it's the most important thing for you to focus on right now. So I'm going to give him an in-game learning objective, and I'm going to give him an out-of-game learning objective. The in-game learning objective is going to be very simple, something that doesn't cost a lot of mental stack, a lot of mental energy, is, okay, I want you to look at your own lower health minions, and I want you to try to time your abilities with the enemy last hits. That's going to be the in-game learning objective. Very shallow, very straightforward, because it's not going to overcomplicate the actual gameplay in itself. And then I'm going to give an out-of-game learning objective when it comes to reviewing. And this is how you get good at reviewing and also understand what to review, is by knowing what to look for. So we now have our in-game learning objective, and I'm going to sync up the out-of-game learning objective together with that. So the out of learning objective is then going to be, hey, I want you to look at your first 6 levels of your lane. Look at levels 1 to 6. And what I want you to look for precisely is I want you to take a look at all of the abilities that you throw. Whenever you miss an ability, right? Whenever you miss a Q on Syndra, I want you to break down why you missed this Q. Did you maybe mistime it, so you didn't time it with a last hit? All right. Or were you maybe not in a good position? So maybe your placement wasn't good. You were too far away, and therefore you didn't land it. And what I want you to do is, whenever you figure out what the reason is that you missed the ability, make a mental note of it, write it down, and try to find trends as well. And then what you're going to recognize is that, hey, I'm constantly mistiming my abilities. I'm constantly fucking up my Q with the enemy last hits, and I'm just throwing them out randomly, and therefore I'm missing them a lot. And then suddenly, the more you're going to be working on this, the more you're going to be reviewing this, after a week or maybe after 2 weeks, you're going to recognize these points in game, because we're so focusing on this particular point, on trying to land our abilities with the enemy last hits, is that it's going to eventually becoming second nature of us. We're going to be recognizing in game that, hey, this is what I need to focus on. You're going to see that low health minion, you're going to be throwing out the Q, and then you recognize, whoa, this is not something that I would have been able to do 2 weeks ago. This is, I'm starting to form a habit. And then you do it for another week, and you're starting to get more comfortable with it. You're starting to get better. And that is how you use the review. That's how you use the learning objective. That's how you use the habit creation to actually improve at League of Legends. This is what it is, guys. And then consistently doing this over and over and over and over and over again is what it takes to get better at this game and climb. So how to measure your improvement? Well, it's already something that I talked about a little bit, is measuring your improvement really comes down towards recognizing that specific thing that you're trying to improve. So for me, right, a really good example is I used to work on the example that we just talked about, timing abilities with last hits for like a long time. I used to work on it for like 2 months. Like a lot of detail goes into that. And what I recognized is I had this one game after like 2 months of practicing it. I had this one game in which that I just landed every single ability onto the enemy champion. And I completely gapped the shit out of the enemy mid laner. And when I had this game, I reflected on it, I reviewed it, and I was like, holy shit. This was literally not something that I would have been able to do 2 months ago. If I would have done it, I would not have been able to do this 2 months ago. I know for a fact that I've gotten so much better that I can just do it right now. And even though it's maybe only 1 out of 5 games, right? It's an improvement. And we're gonna try to like slowly keep that up. Maybe next time we're gonna do it 2 out of 5 games, 3 out of 5 games. And you recognize in that sense that you're actually getting better. So you're actually recognizing that the process works. A lot of people, there's this buzzword, right? Trust the process, right? People don't understand what trusting the process really means. This is what it means. You can see the small incremental improvements that you make. And that's what actually is also fuel for you to continue doing what they're doing. And a lot of people are actually struggling with measuring this. They don't know when they're doing something well. And most of the times that's the reason. The reason behind it is because they are actually not aware of what they're doing. They're not putting enough intention of one specific thing that they're trying to get better at. And because a lot of people overcomplicate it, or they try to do 5 different things at the same time, it's impossible to measure your improvement, and it's impossible to improve in itself, because you can only improve at one thing at a time, because that's how our brains work. Unless you're like some genius, some genius guy, or you're a kid. A kid can do it as well. Like if you're really young, right? If you're really young, you can make multiple connections at the same time. But if you're a little bit older, it's gonna be much harder to do that. So that's really how you measure your improvement. And I wanna like end this off with a little bit of a story of a coaching session that I did last week, and that's actually a session that inspired me to make this session. It's with Zenji. He's one of the coaching clients in the Mid Lane Academy, and I had a session with him 2 weeks ago. And 2 weeks ago, what we recognized is that he was not positioning himself properly in the lane. He was giving away too much space in the lane, which led to him getting bullied by Syndra in the Ahri versus Syndra matchup. So I said, Zenji, when the Syndra throws out her QE, right? Q has a 7 seconds cooldown, her E, Syndra's E has a 17 seconds cooldown. Why are you not walking up in the lane? Why are you not, when she has no abilities, we need to walk up, we need to pressure, we need to zone her off the wave. She's not allowed to take these creeps if she has no cooldowns up. So I said, hey, I want you to fully focus on trying to, when you see that the enemy makes a mistake, when you see that the enemy uses a cooldown, try to take space back in the lane. That was my learning objective towards him. And also, of course, in the reviewing, the out-of-game learning objective matched the in-game learning objective. And I had a session with him yesterday. Yeah, yesterday I had a session with him. And in that session, I was looking at his lane, and he said, okay, so he brought me the session. He said, okay, I want to look at the lane, given the fact that we talked about this learning objective last time, because I think it's going better, but I'm dying to ganks left and right, which makes sense if you're like all the way constantly taking space up in the lane and walking up, right? So this is exactly what I saw. I looked at this review, and I saw a fucking masterclass of taking space back in the lane. Like in these 2 weeks that Zenji has been working on that learning objective, I saw him really like very aggressive posturing when the enemies fucked up an ability, like zoning them off minions, pressuring them just by his movements. And I was honestly really, really impressed. I was very, very impressed. And this really showed me like, holy shit, he just made so many improvements in just 2 weeks by focusing on that one specific part of his game. And he was okay with losing games. He was completely fine with losing games. He was okay with dying to junglers, inting lanes. And yes, it was a rough 2 weeks for him because of the fact that he lost so many games, but he got better at the game. So I said to him at the end, hey, Zenji, you have completed your learning objective, all right? You have literally, like, you've solved it. You're really good at it right now. You've recognized it in your own game. Now, don't really fully focus on it anymore. It's now part of your toolkit. We can now focus on the next learning objective. And we can start executing again, like trying to get back into to the normal level of play while adding this to our toolkit. And this is the session that we had yesterday. I gave him a new learning objective, something to focus on while also executing. But I really want to share, like, this is how it is. He also recognized himself that he got better at it. Same with the story of me working on my ability usage on Syndra, right? It's the time when you feel that you actually improve at the game, when you actually recognize, hey, this is something that I could not have done a week or two ago or a month ago. That's it. That's what we play the game for. That's what we try to improve for. That's why we review. That's why we trust the process. That's why we actually put so much effort into this as well. Like, it's this amazing feedback loop, feedback cycle that we're all going through on our own pace, on our own way. And that's also what makes this game just absolutely incredible. So thank you all for watching. If you guys have any questions, let me know. I'm really happy to answer them for you guys. And if you guys want coaching, there's going to be a link in the description of the Mid Lane Academy. And yeah, hope to see you guys there. Thank you all for watching.